Isn't that the great obstacle? You read the book, and you say, and you're making the coffee, and you think, now, am I any different than I was? What is the great block? What is the great block to keep it from sinking in? I don't know. You got any idea? We tried to approach it from the viewpoint that the ego as a totality will not tolerate any infringement of its boundaries because it realizes that it's a threat to its totality. It's an interlocking system, and to let in love means that the end is inevitable. Let's see if that's so. To allow in love means to the ego ultimate dissolution, resistance. Aha. Above all else then, the ego fears love. The ego is scared to death of Mother's Day. The ego is scared to death of what Mother's Day really is. Resist. It's scared to death of what Mother's Day really is. The recognition of the divinity of love in its expression, of course, on Mother's Day as the feminine, would mean that love as a prevailing dominant value would infiltrate all of society, and that would be the end of many corporations and political positions and all. Therefore, yes, the ego is scared to death of Mother's Day. I don't know if it's scared of Father's Day. Well, wait till June. All right. So love then becomes the greatest threat to the ego. The way to not go to 35 years of lectures with nothing happening then. The secret of it is love. The secret is love for the truth. The secret of it is faith and confidence in the integrity of the source of the truth. And one means of accomplishing that is by kinesiologic testing. To what degree you can trust the validity of what is being said. It comes through the energy field, calibrated energy field of the speaker. The level of the truth then. Truth because truth is only meaningful within a certain context. And what is the context of the words that have been said? We could test the truth of Deutschland über alles, and then we could test the context out of which it came, the consciousness of Adolf Hitler. Actually, Adolf Hitler played upon the evolution of fascism in Germany arose out of a philosophic position. A professor, it's in my book, I forget his name, Pfaffenhofer or something. They justified the German invasion by, it was a doctrine of Raumsleben or something, living room, Lebensraum. That Germany had the right to invade neighboring countries because it needed room to live. Boy, that was a weak one, huh? But it built, the whole structure came out of that. Room to live. Golly. That's what I transmit to the fellow drivers on the highway. I need room to drive, folks. Therefore, I have the right to crash my car into his and knock him off the road because I need driving room. That's a rather weak intellectual position, right? Isn't it? Did we ever calibrate that? No, let's see. Deutschland über alles calibrates over 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 140. Okay, Adolf Hitler at the time, we have permission to resist, calibrate over 120, 130, 140, 150. It corresponded, huh? Okay. All right, so then the demagogue finds the downside in human nature and knows how to directly appeal to that. The smart politician knows what the consciousness level of mankind is, and that he can easily summon up that hatred. He knows that hatred is there only waiting to be summoned up. At the opposite end, we know in spiritual work, because of the reality of existence itself, that the capacity for love and for enlightenment is also available within human mankind. So we'll leave hatred to other people in order to summon that forth. And all we want to recognize here is that divinity is the source of your own existence. It is out of divinity that consciousness arises. It is consciousness. Consciousness is the field holding us all together, out of which everybody is able to hear and experience that which is being said. The presence within all of us is what allows us to experience the subjective experience of that which we are, in which we're trying to verbalize here. So reality then is a radical subjectivity. We'll get to a lecture on meditative techniques at all. But at all times, the shortcut to God is to merely realize the infinite presence of your own capacity to experience and the source of your own existence. Nothing has within it the capacity to create its own existence. Out of what comes existence itself. We bypass causality as a plausible explanation. I think in the first lecture we knocked causality on its butt. And the world hasn't heard of that yet, but the days of causality are over, folks. Because the ego will say, well, what about causality as an explanation? Everything is created in such a way that its essence unfolds due to the divinity of its source. It is because of the divinity of the source of creation that all things are perfectly what they are at any moment. That which appears catastrophically awful appears that way because it's out of context. Because of who you are in the present, that looks terrible in the past. That's already a judgment. The awful, manifesting its awfulness, is supposed to be awful in the awfulness of its awfulness. And it's perfectly awful in the dreadfulness of its horrific ugliness and horror. Despicable. It's supposed to be that way, folks, so you know what it is. Now you know what it is. And then we choose differently this time. We look at the dead bodies on the battlefield, we look at the run-over children, and something within us begins to change. But it changes so slowly, doesn't it? If you calibrate yourself, the consciousness level of mankind, century by century by century, 190, you say, wow, didn't mankind learn anything? The War of 1812? One war right after another. Hitler was really so stupid. I mean, he was really stupid. Napoleon had just pulled that trick and blown it. And he went around and did the same thing, invade Russia. Eastern and Western front at the same time. You say, how can anybody be so stupid? Stupid. So that's that ignorance and that stupidity that we're trying to find a way through today. The Buddha and Jesus both said, the only sin is that of ignorance. Sin as a moralistic put-down is really useless. It's using guilt as a hammer to beat people to death with, or beat yourself to death with. It says there is ignorance. ignorance seems to be innate then in the structure of the ego itself. How can you go to 35 years of lectures and not get anything? Still be the same person. There's something within the ego itself that accounts for this. Century after century, millions slaughtered. You go to the next century. Would it be better? You'd think so. No, it's still 190. Millions more slaughtered, still 190. Millions more slaughtered. You say, whoa, there's something that's really thick-headed about the ego. There's some innate stupidity. Innate stupidity. There, we got it today. The ego is just stupid. It really is dumb. So we should treat it like an imbecile. Stupid, dumb, pitiful. We should feel sorry for the ego, that it is so dumb. It can sit there for 35 years and not get it. I think maybe what happened was, yeah, I see what happened. Okay. All right. The source from which you are learning or hearing or something has to be of a certain dimension to break through the resistance. I held my grandfathers with reverence and respect, and my father and my uncle. Because of that, I didn't argue. And it was appropriate. The way women were treated was appropriate to the way that they were held. And they showed me how they were held. And the reason it rang true is because it was based on spiritual reality. Yes, the feminine is the expression of divinity in that genre of human expression. And I got it in an instant. The same thing should happen in any spiritual literature, spiritual teaching, whatever. The respect, the letting go of resistance to the truth of its source. What is the source of its truth? The source of its truth is the presence within that speaks. Classically, what's speaking now would be called, let's see, in Sanskrit, Purusha. Purusha would be the essence of the self of the teacher, which is expressing itself. That's what is expressing itself. It has nothing to do with the body that is using at the moment. It'll use anybody. Can't trust Purushas. It'll grab anybody, speak through anybody. They can get there. Okay. The source of the realization of the truth of all spiritual teachings, then, is the self within you. You have within yourself the power of recognition. It's only then recognition if what my grandparents had told me, my grandfathers, my uncle, had told me was not innately true, it would not have rung. It would not have resonated within. It's because of the presence of truth within me, I was capable of hearing the truth. It is only because of the presence of truth within everyone here that there's any capacity to extract any truth out of the research that we've done and we're sharing with you. All right, so we'll stop for a minute and see if there's any more questions. I think an hour's talking is enough. I don't know what time it is, 11:30? You want to take a few minutes and then we'll break for lunch, or do you want to break for lunch early? All for breaking for lunch early, raise hands. All for resuming again before lunch, raise hands. Oh dear, we have to resume. All right, we'll take a short break and then we'll do a short session and then we'll have lunch and celebrate that tomorrow's Mother's Day. Oh, to those who are late for lunch. Those who are late for lunch get the leftovers. You don't get to enjoy Diane's cookies.
Diana Renee's.
Oh, Renee made them too. Oh my God. Well, we try to have the world's best cookies. They say he isn't much of a speaker, but boy, do they have great cookies at his meetings. I don't know what he was talking about, but the cookies were great. The reason the cookies are great is because you get the love with which they were made, you know? You hold those cookies in, let's hold those cookies. We hold those cookies in mind, resist. Oh wow, they're over 500, 510, 520, 530. 530 cookies, man. Those are cookies. I mean, those cookies calibrated 530. I'd rather have one of those cookies with me than Bin Laden. He only calibrates at 70. All right, so oh my goodness.
Is consciousness a byproduct of the spirit entering a dense matter?
Oh boy, oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy. I don't know, we've got enough questions to keep us busy for a while. Well, you see, each question reflects what we intend to talk about anyway, and it just reminds me what we were going to talk about. See, the disassembly of the ego takes eons of time. Most people in this audience have probably been here 50, 60 times before. To try to accomplish that which happens within an instant. I use the word happens, linguistically to make sense. To sense one's reality is simple. It's only a matter of knowing where to look. If you look over here, you're looking at the written word. 35 years of the written word. Where is what you're looking for? You can all sense right in this instant. Right in this instant, there's people already distant. I see it. To become light, yeah. What you do is you catch the experiencing of the world just prior to the mind's commentary about it. If you back off from the mind, you'll find an inner stillness which hasn't said anything yet. You live in the space before the world has said anything yet. When you walk outside, you're struck by the beauty of the surroundings. You haven't said anything about it yet. You live in that space. The space is pre-verbal, prior to mentalization. The difficulty with verbalization is one has to come out of that space and come forward into that verbalization, because that's what the world expects. You have to do world speak, or the world doesn't understand, because nothing's being spoken. Right at this moment, just sense within yourself that which hasn't had a second yet to make any comment about what the speaker's saying yet. The mind's commentary is a delay. There's a split-second delay, and you live in that experience before any comment. When you dive off a diving board into the water, there's no thinkingness about it as you hit the water. The thinkingness comes later. A split second later, that dive wasn't made correctly. Oh, that dive wasn't made correctly. But that's a split second after you go splat on the water, you realize that full gainer was only a 3/4 gainer. The Red Belly Express. Even as you think you're not getting it, you're there right now. Right now, within everybody's consciousness, is the presence of consciousness itself prior to any kind of content. So you draw back and you live in the space right before the mind starts to make commentary. And you hold back in this space beyond the mind's thinkingness. Thinkingness should be voluntary. I think when I'm forced to think, the world is forever asking you to think and comment. No, Jesus. No end to it. You're always exhausted by coming out of the infinite peace and beauty of silence because the world has some dumbbell question. Hello? What is it now? It takes energy. I have a new wonderful telephone at home. It's a space phone or whatever they call it. I don't know. I don't understand electronics and all that stuff. Why? Because you got to read all this fine writing. No matter what you buy, it's got a 16-page manual. Oh, get away from it. So my favorite radio is in the waiting room of my office. And it's like the radio I grew up with. It's got a dial. It goes on, volume, off, and you turn the dial. That's it. The world hates that kind of a radio, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Nowadays, you get somebody gave me an electronic radio, a new radio. You know, and it's got a 14-page. I can't make it do. I can't even get it to tell time. You know what I'm saying? I've got one. I don't know what you do to make it even tell time. You see what I'm saying? You get dragged into this complexity. It pulls all your energy and your interest, and your survival gets pulled out there. Yeah, Ramana Maharshi said it correctly when I read Ramana Maharshi. I said, that's it. He says the mind gets pulled into the world, away from the self. And one's reality is prior to the self. One's reality is prior to the self as what? As a condition, as a field. So your reality is a field. It's the innate field out of which, just prior to thinkingness, when you wake up first thing in the morning, the field is there. You don't even know who you are yet. You don't know what your name is. You don't know where you are. There's just the awareness of awareness itself. And at that point, all you know is that you're awake, period. You know that phase when you wake up? You know you're awake and that's it. So that's what the condition is that you're looking for. It's always present. When thinking that I am that which is talking and thinking is what's real, the identification of self, of reality as the ego, when that goes away, in an instant, there's deadening silence. Then the question is, how to be in the world of dead silence when the world is talking all the time. You know, it's hard. And took many years to adjust how to do that. Most people, when they go into that space, don't readjust. They do not re-enter the world. Some kind of karmic momentum. Some people do return to the world. All right, so at all times you're really making an effort to come out of the state of inner peace. It's sort of like having to wake up and deal with the world. Look within yourself and see there's really a reluctance to deal with all this thinkingness and judgmentalism and emotionality. It's exhausting. Within yourself, you'll find, man, I'm really tired. Everybody here tired? Man, I'm exhausted with dealing with the world, aren't you? That's why people look forward to dying. Yeah, I can't wait till it's over. I mean, it drags on and on and on, and geez, you know what the end is anyway. So what's the big deal? An hour later, it's all the same, isn't it? Which brings up the question on Alzheimer's. Somebody asked me about Alzheimer's, and I dealt with Alzheimer's a lot the last 5 or 10 years. In Alzheimer's, the spirit starts leaving. That's all it is, senility. You're not really there anymore. You're like an enlightened person. You ask an enlightened person, what's today's date? What the hell should he care what today's date is? He doesn't live in today's date. There's no date in reality, you know. There's only the experience of nature being what it is. If I go and ask a tree, I say, what's the date? He doesn't live in the world of dates. The tree doesn't live there, see? The tragedy of Alzheimer's is in the witness of Alzheimer's. The suffering is in the witness. When you don't know what the hell day it is anymore, are you suffering? No. I've asked 1,000 Alzheimer patients, how are you? I'm fine. They call me with an emergency. They say that you can't eat and you're this and that and the other. Oh, I'm fine. You know what day it is today? Oh, I don't pay attention to those things anymore, you know. What year were you born? Oh. That's what they say to me. What year were you born? Oh. Like asking a woman her age, you know, 40 years ago. You never asked a woman her age. Oh, they would always go. My grandmothers would go like, how old are you, Granny? Oh. Then they make up stories to make you happy. I mean, you obviously want an answer from them. So they'll make up a story on the spot, and 5 minutes later, they've forgotten the story. Do you fear Alzheimer's? No. Why? Because people identify with the content of ego as self, and there are people that are frightened to death of losing their memory. What the hell if you don't remember 1932 to 1934? I mean, what's so precious that you want to be able to recall it instantly, right? Anything? Person says, I'm afraid I might lose my memory. I mean, nothing better could happen to you. Memory is the recall of perceptual illusion as it compounded over the years. I mean, it's like the poison well, folks, it's killing you. So, do I feel sorry for the Alzheimer's patient? No, I feel sorry for the witness, the family. Poor old Granny's losing it. They're weeping and sobbing. Is Granny weeping and sobbing? No, she's not. How is it here in this nursing home? I went to all the nursing homes in Yavapai County for close to 10 years, right? Every day I knocked my brains out. There wasn't any other doctor that would go see them. So the county was happy somebody would make a house call and go to the nursing home and talk to this sweet old lady. They were all adorable. I loved them all. The men and the women were all cute as could be. And it's because you can see what's lovable has been completely preserved. What's lovable is totally there. What's irrelevant has disappeared. Oh, all they've lost is what's irrelevant. As you get closer to the end, some people have let's not even title it anything. The spirit begins to leave before the physical body. The spirit, by the time some people, by the time they physically die, the spirit's left years ago. I knew Bill Wilson, that was the founder of AA, and Bill would say, I'd say, And I actually treated him the last year of his life, vitamin E and various stuff. Antioxidants we were fooling around with. And he would drift off, and then his watchers would be concerned that Bill had drifted off. How is it, Bill? And he'd say, there are many places you can go in heaven. He'd been visiting in heaven back and forth, like he was shopping for every future resident, you know what I mean? But you see in old people then, do I fear Alzheimer's in myself? No. No, I don't feel Alzheimer's in myself. I'm 75. I have senior moments, however. Yeah, I call a lot of people, what's his name? What's his name and what's her name? I know who they are. So what happens then is that which is important and significant is no longer located within the ego's functions. It's not important to be able to read this manual and figure out how to push all these buttons so that I can set the watering system for every third day and half time on rain days and 3 days. I looked at one in the store the other day, a new watering system thing. It was mind-boggling. It has so many bells and whistles, you couldn't figure out how the hell to make it water the lawn, you know what I mean? It would serve 12 stations. Why would you, 12 stations? I just want one that turns it on and off, you know what I'm saying? Set on at 3, off at 4. Don't you have one like that? No, we don't have one like that. I'll tell you, folks, the easiest way is in the morning on the way to work, you turn the watering system on, and on the way, you turn the hose on, sprinklers, and when you come home, you turn it off. Is that simple or what? Just saved you $72. Oh, you can turn it on and off yourself. Never thought of that. After breakfast, you turn it on. For dinner, you turn it off. That's all it takes. All right, so reality then is the world of simplicity. The person with advanced Alzheimer's is ultra simple. They have no needs, no wants. You say to them, how are things here? Fine. How are they treating you? Fine. Would you rather be someplace else? No. While you're still hanging on to the mind in the past, you grieve. But as happily Alzheimer's progresses, you lose that attachment to the past, and now you're not grieving that you're not living on the farm in Michigan anymore. Except to the witness, subjectively, Alzheimer's is probably closest to enlightenment than most human consciousness. That's a statement of fact. Yeah. I used to look at the Alzheimer's patients and I thought, Christ, he's a Buddha. What's his problem? I got no problem. How are you? I'm fine. Everybody treat you? Oh, Jean, I'm fine. How are things here yesterday? I don't know. Where are you going tomorrow? They're living in the instant of now, in which the self is still present, but it's only present as self with a capital S. It's not present as a small s. So Alzheimer's is the dissolution of the self with a small s, and those who are more spiritually advanced see that the self with a capital S is still vitally there. They're just as loving, warm, friendly, responsive in the instant. That's what we summon forth in Walmart. When you lose your identification with your persona, you're just walking with a basket, you're a nobody. This person is also a nobody. These two nobodies can instantly be very friendly and quite loving with each other. Isn't that true? If you're walking in Walmart and somebody bumped into you with a basket and suddenly she started to cry, you'd say to her, you know what I mean? Because that veneer that prevents us from realizing who we are has been removed. You know? So Alzheimer's, from a certain viewpoint then, is a blessing. You forget that you're dying, so you don't have to even grieve that, you know what I'm saying? If you don't have Alzheimer's, then you got to worry that you're dying. If you got Alzheimer's, it doesn't even enter your mind to worry about it. The whole thing is effortless, painless, and I think on the other side you'd hardly notice the difference, do you? Did you go on the other side? Do you notice the difference? Oh yeah, you notice the body's laying there. Oh. Anybody's gone out of body realizes that. You realize, oh, where's the body? It's laying there in the bed. Oh. I forgot. I thought I was still that body. So helpers come to remind you that isn't yours anymore. You don't need it anymore. You don't want it anymore anyway. It's a mess. But you leave it at 93, blind, deaf, dumb, crippled, and arthritis, and one leg missing. I mean, who's going to hang on to it? So that's my view of old age suffering and death is the suffering is due to hanging on to what was and the absolute refusal to surrender. Death and dying Alzheimer's are moments of great opportunity to reach spiritual enlightenment. They're great moments because the investment in the world, the investment in the mind, the investment in the functions of the body and the mind have diminished to the point that it's easy to let it go. Easy to let it go. To be in the space just prior to thought. So your reality is the sense of presence, your sense of being here. You hear what he's talking about. It isn't necessary to really understand it. You sense that you are present. You sense that you're in the presence of the allness of us here. Just like when you walk out in nature, just before your stupid mind says, isn't that a beautiful tree? You catch the space in which you saw the tree's beauty without comment. That's the space you live in. It's just prior to thought. It's easy to just fall back into it. It's not like something you'll have to accomplish through years of study and meditation. The willingness to trust it and just drop into that, back into that is your reality. Your reality is a priori to any programming. Your reality is, what is it in the computer world? The software and the hardware. Okay, so your beauty is the hardware which is always present prior to hitting the button and getting the software. Oh, isn't that a beautiful tree? It's too late already. Then I just said that. However, even while you're saying that, you can back off from the ego and not identify with that statement. And so the two things exist. Reality is both context and content. The two things exist. One can realize the foolishness of the statement and simultaneously be aware of the beauty of the woods prior to any comment. And we'll do one or two more questions and then we'll break for lunch. Trying to read these is something else. You know, they really have very good handwriting. It's just that it's like reading the stuff on the back of the clock on how to make it work. It's sort of, how should we hold the situation in the Middle East, coming back to the present world? Well, the President of the United States, the presidency calibrates around 450, and it has throughout centuries. I think a few of them, of course, in ancient history, in olden times were them, but in modern times, the average consciousness level is about 450. I think Roosevelt was like 499 or something. Churchill was 510. The consciousness then of the leaders of the modern world are usually in the mid-400s. They're going to do what appeals to reason, the intellect, intelligence, research. Their advisors, they're going to do they're going to pull together the best advice team, and then they will give it a slight preference due to political position. Current president, has no problem with right versus wrong. Right is right and wrong is wrong. What's the problem? Within that context, it's true. That within that context, you see. Now your question is, should that context apply? When a tiger is about to rip your jugular vein out, the context is a little different than looking at tiger in the zoo. The context is a little different. What's permissible, the alternatives are somewhat different, depending on context. So it's the context of the zoo that makes it a little different than the jungle. This has to do, my goodness, these are tough ones. Oh my golly. Oh my golly. We got some really brilliant minds here today. We will answer all these things in one way or the other. I'll just answer one more question, and then because we will break for lunch, because these will have to sort of look at and pull out the essence of it. I forgot what I was going to talk about now. There's a lot of questions about calibrations of the level of consciousness. See, calibrating levels of consciousness is only a tool. It's a tool. It's a way of getting information. It doesn't get you enlightened. But it does tell you what's a dead end. What's a dead end? And also what's a pitfall, what to avoid, which way to go. So it's helpful as far as direction. Of course, the capacity to tell the truth about anything instantly brings up a zillion questions about everything. So you have to look at the intention behind the curiosity, behind the question. Very often you find out more about what you wanted to know by examining the reason why the question is coming up. It's been a unique opportunity because we've found out that there is access to the field that accounts for the spin of this photon in this direction, instantly the spin of the photon in this direction, and the only thing that changed was human consciousness observed it. Human consciousness does nothing but look at this photon. Instantly the photon rotates this way. This photon rotates this way, instantly. No connection between the two whatsoever. The only connection that's possible would be that there's a common field, common, a matrix, a lattice work, I think it's called in quantum mechanics, hypothesized a matrix, a lattice work, something that under which the whole universe, the reality of matter, the reality of all that exists, then arises out of that which is invisible, indefinable, undefinable, unlimited. It's that sense of that within yourself. It's just a matter of sensing it. It's a matter of intuition. You go back within yourself to that which is there prior to hearing this word. There is something there right before this word is heard and right before the mind thinks of a reaction to the word. It's in that space. The most likely place and situation to find that space that we call enlightenment is while you're eating cookies, Diana's cookies. If that don't take you there, nothing will. So we'll resume then in exactly 1 hour, okay? And we'll do more questions. I'll have a chance to look at the questions during the break. Oh, okay, so I don't know if we have everybody in here. There's enough water here in many parts of the world for the entire family to take a bath. It seems like a wasteful indulgence. I mean, I know whole families that would pour over, you know, that's all you need for about 2 or 3 people, you know. And we take it for granted, huh? We take it for granted. We live in a different realm, huh? the world of plenitude. Well, we were asked to test a number of various things. Many of them I already know the answer, but just for fun, a near-death experience tends to break down the ego. We have permission to ask that question. I don't think it's correctly phrased right. Near-death experience helps one transcend the identification with the ego, resist. It can bring about major transformations in consciousness, resist. It can bring about a major positive leap in consciousness, resist. Right. The way you tell out of body from a near-death experience, and there's a lot of lack of sophistication, not only in the general public, but even some spiritual teachings. Out of body is one thing, near-death experience is another. Out of body doesn't necessarily change your calibratable level of consciousness at all. That's a fact, resist. You can go out of body, come back in body, and boy, that was really interesting. But there's really not a major shift to consciousness. Near-death experience is of a totally different dimension. One is just awestruck by the immensity of the realization of the nature of divinity, and that which you're experiencing is not different than who you are. So it's a major transformation, near-death experiences. So to tell the truth, you can calibrate before and after the experience. Out of body, usually you'll be about the same. However, out of body, you do become more sophisticated. You realize that you also have an etheric body. One thing that you're quite certain of is you're floating in space. Is that you have an etheric body, because now you're it. So, and so out of body is, of course, quite exhilarating, and it happened to me many years ago. In those days, nothing was heard of it, and I think I've recounted it before. In a serious illness, suddenly there I was 5 or 6 feet over the body, and I looking down at the body in the bed. And the interesting thing was the sense of self went with the etheric body. The capacity to know, feel, think, hear, reason, everything, the sense of I was up here. I was up here. And it was down there. So it is an opportunity to realize that the sense of self, the spiritual self, is an energy body and not a physical body. At the time, I don't think it had any particularly transformative experience. When I told my psychoanalyst about it, I was in psychoanalysis at the time. God bless him, dear Dr. Ovesi. I said, God almighty, there was this experience. He said, well, you had a toxic psychosis there with a reduplication of the body image and a rejection of one aspect of it. And I said, you're right. I mean, we were both atheists, He didn't think much of God, religion, and at the time I didn't either. So we didn't have any problem with it. Yes, it was a toxic, couple of irritated brain cells. That's all we knew about in those days. All right, we've got some interesting leading questions into the subject which we're going to go into anyway. In my talking about women, of course, I was just using Mother's Day as a point of reference. I'm not differentiating men from women, because divinity, of course, is equally present. The form that it takes within the perceptual world is different. I mean, a man is different from a woman within the physical world, you know what I mean? And symbolically, they represent different, they symbolically in the unconscious. Those of you who are familiar with the work of Jung and all, we realize that the archetype of the feminine and the archetype of the male are two different things, and historically they've always been. Even the planets are named with various genders, and the gods and all. That's really a different subject. it's a subject of study in itself, the origin of how this arises, how it expresses itself. The divinity of all is the same, of course. I was just talking about its expression as a woman, and then using that to denote the importance of context, how woman was conceived of in the 1800s, early 1900s now, is a shift of context, but the reality, of course, has not been changed at all. Some of these are a little too complicated. I can't answer them. They're beyond me. It's just too complicated. All right. I'll take my notes about them. Here we have, we forgot to put this up before, it's just a point of reference. It's a very useful point of reference because I get many requests from all kinds of groups, publishers, writers, and all, to reproduce it. And I always tell them yes, because it's useful as a teaching device. It's useful as a teaching device. And people say, well, you see, people can't seem to get out of the ego's view of things being better than others or ranking them. Is 500 better than 400? No, 500 is a different problem than 400. To have any calibrated number at all indicates a problem. If you're at 500, your problem is that you're not at 600. Things aren't better than others, they're just different than others. People that are just entering the 400s are trying to own the capacity of reason and logic and all. And what we call sophomoric is usually somebody that's just entered the 400s and they're dazzled by their capacity to use logic and thinking. And because they don't realize its downside, they take it to the ridiculous extreme, you know what I'm saying? And then they write legislation. I mean, it's okay in the abstract, but you should, try to live with it. I read somewhere that the IRS regs run 58,000 pages, and of course, as a taxpayer, you are legally liable for knowing all of its contents. You realize that? Because it's unknowable, the government can't understand it, so it makes you responsible for knowing it. Yeah, so I mean, that's the intellect gone wild without any limitation. So ranking would be then the mind's proclivity for status and things like this, and then projecting it onto these fields. Nothing is better than anything else. It's different than something else because it's addressing a whole different problem. It's addressing a whole different problem. Is loss the occasion for grief, or is it the gateway to freedom and elation? Depends on who you lost, eh? Yeah. So you see, you don't have to mourn loss at all. You can see that loss is the occasion. Let's say you own a whole head of cattle and they're all dead by morning, some terrible disease. Well, you don't have to get up and milk them, I'll tell you that. And 4 o'clock in the morning in the Midwest through the snow and the ice and pitch blackness with snow up to here and walk through all that cattle poo to milk this thing. All right, so every loss then can be recontextualized as an opportunity for freedom. As valuable as that possession may have been, it still is the opportunity now to discover a new life. The company collapses, you lose your position. Is that a loss? It is only if you hang on to the past. What is really going on is you're afraid of the freedom that the dissolution of that commitment now opens up. You're now free to become anything you want, go anywhere you want? Are you going to stay in the same part of the world, same part of the country? Are you? In other words, it's sort of scary, the immensity of the freedom that you had, see? All right, so ranking then would be just a projection that we project onto this. And the question often arises, how do you see perfection in any and all conditions? Because perception is a projection, and you will find what you're looking for. That's the whole basis of quantum mechanics. The reason they stopped calling things measurements is because what is found is the consequence of what you're looking for. The observed is then seen as a function of the observer. The observer. The observer is what determines what's observed. Now, what's observed depends on intention. We said that calibrated level of consciousness as well as karma has to do with spiritual intention. Now, spiritual intention doesn't fluctuate. It tends to move quite slowly, although you can have a major event such as a near-death experience where spiritual intention suddenly takes a giant leap. The moment, little angriness, irritation, regrets, all these things, those are not fluctuations on the level of consciousness. The level of consciousness is pretty steady. It's set up by the karmic development of the totality of your spiritual commitment. So the spiritual commitment then tends to prevail. Fluctuations may occur only in a fleeting thought. So if you calibrated a thought, the thoughts may jump all over. But that which you are doesn't change that easily. And people involved in spiritual work know how difficult that is to get it to change. So it's pretty much set and determines how you see the world. That calibrated level of energy is influenced then through your own decision. Is it influenced by the group? Yes, I think so. Your calibrated level of consciousness is influenced by the group with which you identify. Resist. Yeah, it's identified, yes. It is influenced because you're saying, I am that, I embrace that as my reality. So it isn't so much the group, is that you are verifying that the group represents your own spiritual goal. You don't have to drag the canoe with you. So, not killing innocent children may be a very important spiritual learning down here. There are certain very large religious groups in the world right now where, getting up this far is a great advance. Getting over 70 is a major improvement. That God is not pleased by your killing thousands of innocent women and children would seem so ludicrous to us, but it might be a tremendous aha to somebody. All right, so as you move up, your own spiritual awareness moves up. The group that you find useful at one time, you're going to outgrow the group. Eventually, you outgrow all groups. So the group is useful as mutual support, and the continuous feedback helps to clarify one's understanding of that particular religious position or spiritual position. And then one moves on. I think there were a number of different groups people asked me about individually. I don't like to do them publicly. You see, by their fruits you shall know them. We don't have to ask what is the calibrated level of certain groups and their actions, because by their fruits you shall know them. So we did write something about the difference between a true spiritual group and a cult. Cults calibrate below 200. That's the quickest way. A cult is non-integrous. So a cult may take the name of a great leader or avatar or spiritual guru or whatever and call itself that, and then underneath the guise of that really become a political action group. The one in China that's having trouble with the government, you see, its problem is that it didn't stick to just strictly spiritual, it got political. And when it got political, it began to challenge the Chinese authority. All governments, by nature, protect themselves. That's why they're your government. So China outlawed them, right? See, Falun Gong, I think is the name of it. Okay. So if you stay home and meditate and do good works, the government will not take any position about you. But if you start getting out there with the parade and you're going to overthrow the regime and put in your philosophical concepts, prepare to die. Prepare to die. You can make a grandstand statement, but that isn't what makes the world turn, you know what I'm saying? So a cult can take on the name of a great leader, call itself, the Holy Church of God, and the Holy Church of God. And then the name of Holy Church of God burn down the homes of whatever, you know what I'm saying? Just because they call themselves that doesn't mean anything. All right, so we define the difference between a cult and a truly integrous spiritual group. Of course, we as a group know all you have to do is calibrate them, but to the world, that which is of God gives forth love and peace. It's as simple as that. Love and peace is what radiates from it. Sometimes the original of the spirit, the originator or the original speaker of that spiritual truth, it is loving and pure, but then that's grabbed by other groups who then run with it and use it as justification to convert people by the sword. Jesus meant the sword of truth, right? Didn't mean the sword of steel. So it's misused then for other ends. We notice that people are born at different levels of consciousness. The very instant of birth, and there's another question having to do with geography. I meant today to have a transparency to project with the world map, calibrating the various levels of consciousness and prevailing civilizations over the world. It's very interesting because you see that like tends to attract like. That's sort of true. So if you're born with a level of consciousness of 50, let's say, you're very likely to get born into a body that happens to be part of a civilization that in general calibrates around 50. In other words, it's like nothing happens by accident. That if like tends to go to like. At the very moment of birth, at the very moment before birth even, the calibrated level of consciousness of the entity is already identifiable and we can actually calibrate it, right? Okay? What we just said is true, resist. That's a fact. We've done it over and over. So what we think is unspiritual, let's say we look at the lifestyle of somebody here and we go cluck, cluck, cluck. Yeah, but that person came in here. For them to be at 100 or 150 is a major advance, major advance. You can look back at previous lifetimes, and these areas that you transcend become they stand out of that lifetime, the lifetime of surmounting physical death. It's thrilling. You commit hara-kiri and ecstasy. The second you're out of body, ecstasy. Surmounted that for all time. Never again to be inhibited by the fear of physical death. That makes a very ferocious warrior who's not afraid of death. Look out. So from that moment on, you've perfected the fearless warrior. You can walk into a hail of bullets and you don't give a rap about it. You're no longer susceptible to that. Well, now you've transcended that level. There's no point to, I don't have to get myself killed over and over to get the point, you know what I mean? You got a physical body, you see the thing laying there, the other spirit and you laugh at each other. Great job, Joe, great job. You know, we both did it. So there's really no point to do that again. You don't have to commit hara-kiri 10 or 12 times, you know what I mean? You get the point of it. It's a pain in the, it's not pleasant. So I'd only do it once if I were you. It isn't that one thing is better than another. You see, as you grasp the totality of consciousness as it has evolved throughout time, and the way it manifests on this planet as the evolution of life on this planet, evolving into mankind, evolving into modern man, you begin to realize what you're dealing with. You're dealing with like a profound morass out of which consciousness is only just barely popping its little head. Huh? It didn't cross 200 until the late 1980s. In other words, it's like modern consciousness is just being born now. We're part of the birth process of Homo spiritus. Homo spiritus is a declaration made by this great, wonderful being here. Homo spiritus is correct, resist. It is the emergence of Homo spiritus, resist. Okay. In the book then, I say, there is now emerging out of this morass of negativity, ignorance, and finally the 400s, the ego, the appearance of love, which is relatively recent in the human condition as a prevailing energy. We have now the emergence of the spiritually aware being, aware of themselves as a spiritual reality. The emergence of Homo spiritus. All the branches off the evolutionary tree, you see? It's not a linear thing where this gets better and better and better and better and better and better. In the evolutionary tree, evolution, by the way, happens on the level of consciousness, then it manifests within the physical domain. But you see its branches off the tree. This branch goes off here. This branch doesn't just get longer and bigger and better. No, it stops there. Its potentiality has been realized when it hits the perfection of that which it is. And then you see later another branch off the tree, and then another branch higher off the tree. But you see the one branch doesn't, so the evolution of consciousness as it's expressed in mankind is not the continuous evolution of one trend at all. It's the emergence of a new trend, Those of us here today represent really a new branch off the evolutionary tree. We are not an improvement on Cro-Magnon man. We're not an improvement. We're not an improvement on Homo erectus. Homo erectus went here and he got as far as Homo erectus could go. End of Homo erectus. Each of us then represents a branch off the tree, and there's a new branch off the tree called Homo spiritus. That's a fact. That's so. And the group here certainly represents that which is Homo spiritus. The awareness that we're more than a physicality, the awareness that we're more than a mind. The recognition of the spiritual potential within, which is only to be discovered and nurtured for it to flourish and blossom. Did Neanderthal man worry about these things? No. not suitable. I think Cro-Magnon man was about 70. It has to do with physical survival as an animal. Get enough to eat, to mate, to stay alive. So that's the animal. So you had to first perfect the ability to maintain life within animal form, within biped form, and then consciousness went on. Consciousness got bored with that one. Got bored with him and said he's boring, and went on and developed this Cro-Magnon, and then on through the ages. What we see now is where the evolution of consciousness is at its present moment, this moment here. The evolution of human consciousness throughout all of time, throughout eons and eons of time, has resulted in us. We're it. We are it. Amen. We are it. We are it. The advancing edge of consciousness is really what is here today, is it not? What is the ultimate truth? How does one reach it? What are the tools that are useful for the task? Is where the advancing edge of spiritual consciousness is. Is it possible in the old religions? Well, see, religion is one thing, spiritual truth is another. Hypothetically, at least in the beginning, they are one and the same. But we see throughout history how spiritual truth then gets destroyed for secular means, and the original truth is lost within. The more spiritually advanced person utilizes what they realize is the spiritual truth from that religion and lets the shaft go. Lets the shaft go. Whether you eat meat on Friday or not is really irrelevant to God. Let's see if that's a fact. That's a fact. Okay. When I grew up, you didn't eat meat on Friday because it was respectful. Well, no, it was a sin, really. It was worse than respectful. High Episcopal, it was like Catholic. Anyway, you didn't eat meat on Friday, you know. It was really out of respect for the religion and respect for the teaching. Whether it got you in or out of heaven, I don't know. But as a kid, I suppose I would worry. If you ate meat on a Friday and died, you'd think you were going right to the other place. We have permission to do some public leaders resist that are in the Middle East resist. Okay. I myself have wondered about this particular individual. We have permission to calibrate him in public here, resist. Well, he's on TV every night, so I guess he's not too timid about who he is. This gentleman calibrates over 200 resist. Wow, over 220, 230, 240, wow, 260, 250. Arafat, 250. Let's see, Arafat was at 250 10 years ago, resist. No. Now, Arafat is interesting because we see a lot of well-known, in fact, currently popular gurus that wrote books years ago when they were in a high space, usually the mid-500s. And their books calibrate in high 500s, but if you calibrate what is the energy of this entity today, you'll often find they're like 130. Common, very big name gurus in the world. Everybody goes, oh, when you mention their name. You calibrate them, they're like 140 or something, you know? It's because they went up and then were hit by, you might say, their opposite and succumbed to the opposite. That's how the cult is born. And you have a certain charisma, people start to follow you, you start to believe your own publicity, you start getting power over others, you start telling them what to do, you develop a cult, you have to swear an oath, you got to pay money, get a thing on your whatchamacallit. And every time the name of the leader, you bow, even Est, God bless Est, it was Werner, right, but it was Werner everything. You'd go to an Est thing, there would be Werner about bigger than a movie theater on the screen. It was all Werner, On the other hand, Est taught some terrific things, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, with Est, you can take off weight very easy, Lots of good things in it. All right. So then the cult, we see, somebody asked me about various things. I said, I don't want to calibrate them in public. The leader becomes charismatic in a cult. It becomes all Baba so-and-so, Master so-and-so there, Master Baba. So it all becomes all Master Baba and with many oohs and ahs. So it's like a personality cult. Then there's a specialness to belonging to the group. There's a group formed, it gets a name, maybe an initiation ceremony, and now the group becomes, you're either with them or not with them. You know, you're one of us or not one of us. So it becomes very, instead of seeing yourself as part of the allness of life, you now become partitioned as special. So you're a member, that makes you special. Then there's group lingo, which is only known to the members of the group. There's the specialness of the cult leader. There is a negative reaction if you leave. If you decide you're going to leave the Holy Rosary of the Round Table or whatever, horrible things happen to you. Snakes in your mailbox and hate mail. So there's a negative reaction if you try to leave. So you become a prisoner. So the what is really brainwashing is then proceeded about this organization, about its specialness. Often it considers itself exclusive. Some goes so far as to say that they're the only ones that are going to get into heaven. Then it's a little hard to imagine, but there are people who really believe that. So there's a specialness, a uniqueness, a cult-like atmosphere, a specialness to belonging or not belonging. Various titles go with it. And after a while, there's probably a lot to be learned. There's a lot to be learned at that level. But then at a certain level, you begin to realize this is not freeing and liberating. This is confining. This is confining. And it tends to be totalitarian. At its greatest expression, it becomes totalitarian. At that point, your intuition will tell you it's time to move on. It's very often hard to see because the adulation with which certain people are held by large groups. So mass hysteria, the suggestion and madness of crowds takes over. So if you're in a group and everybody's going Heil Hitler, you find yourself enthusiastically, So the charisma of the leader then becomes magnetic, and the adulation of the group tends to be infectious. So you got to watch that you don't get brainwashed. The only thing a teacher can do is reflect truth. It doesn't make them special, unique, anything at all. Don't forget, to a realized person, their condition is just nothing. It's just the way it is. Is the cat's condition to a cat special? No, it's just being a cat. So a true teacher is just like a cat. I mean, it just is what it is, but there's nothing to say about that. It's just being what one is, you know what I mean? So there would hardly be any adulation expected from being what you are. The cat doesn't expect me to say, "Oh, great cat," because you are cat. The presence within is so powerful. It is of itself. It is of itself. It bypasses all personhood. So there is no one to go ooh and ah over. Now let's go on to Mr. Chiron. Can we have permission to do Mr. Chiron in this group at this time? God help us all. Mr. Chiron is over 200 resist. Uh-oh. Mr. Chiron is over 175, 180, 185, 190. Ooh, wow. So thank you. So that's a little bit of a reversal over what it used to be. I think Chiron used to be high and came down, and Arafat was really down and has come up. That's a fact. Okay, Chiron was once higher, resist, and has now come down, resist. And Arafat was once lower and has now come up, resist. Yeah, you've got an oddball crisscross there, in which one has come down in order to win, and the other one is coming up in order to survive. I think Arafat realizes unless he re-owns integrity, he's a dead duck. And I think he realizes that it's not Palestine or himself, his political self, that's at risk. It's integrity itself. I think it's intuitively dawning on him that unless he owns the power of integrity, he's a goner. That's a fact, Resist. Yeah, by God, he is getting it. So all the people praying for it, it's working. Somebody's hearing it, you know. The first one to gain integrity is going to win. You know, the first one that really regains integrity is going to win and win the respect of the world and the backing of the world. Whichever one finally comes out with integrity is going to win. Okay. So that's Arafat and Chin. Yogananda, we had calibrated him before, was at 550. He would therefore be the perfect spiritual teacher. Let's say all spiritual teachers are good for wherever you're at. See, if this guy tells you it's wrong to chop up infidels, that's a danger advance, so he's a very good guru till there. You understand what I'm saying? 550 is the classical guru in our world. These are people that are unconditionally loving. What did we say he was, 550? Yeah. 550. 540 is unconditional love. Anything that runs 540 and up is certainly worthy of great respect. And as we said, the 12-step groups are 540. They represent the pure essence of spirituality. That which has no opinion on external issues tells you right away that it's not corruptible. There's no opinions on outside issues. Anything that has no opinions on outside issues can't be bought or sold, can it? Because there's no lever out there to grab them by. They don't care what you think of them. They don't need your vote. They don't need your money. They can just be who they are. Yes?
Does Yogananda still calibrate at 550, or has he gone beyond that?
That I'm not going to ask because you're asking the karmic fate of his spirit. I don't know. As a being here on the planet, he calibrated at 550. I presume his writings are 550. I presume that's correct. You know, as I said before, sometimes there's a disparity between the writings of a teacher and their current calibration. It's because as you evolve, don't forget a test of that comes up all the time. And you can buy its opposite. The power over others, I remember being presented with that one, and I forget what that level was, we calibrated it later. But it was really enormous power, unlimited by any limitation. And it was offered, all you had to do was say yes to it. And so in the book I'm finishing now, I feel responsible as a spiritual educator, teacher, or whatever you want to call it, to forewarn people that as you go up, that which is Luciferic is waiting for you. It's waiting for you. And when you get there, then it is for you. It's like the media doesn't bite you until you become a celebrity, you know what I mean? You're not influencing enough people. But when you start getting up there, now the sniper's bullet starts getting aimed at you. So I feel it's a responsibility to educate the student about that as you evolve, that which would deny the reality of what you have realized as truth becomes challenged. And it's done cleverly. I think I wrote it rather specifically in the book I'm finishing now. I remember it at about 8:50 or so, comes in the realization out of nowhere. It's not via a person. No spiritual truth comes from other beings. You don't know what you know because that told me, or some spirit, ascended spiritual master told you that. It's a realization of that which you are. So then suddenly in the purity of that incredible space comes the knowingness. It comes out of like a non-verbal realization. Now that you are beyond personal karma, and there is no arbitrary God to punish you, inasmuch as there is no payment and no consequences to anything you do, think, or say, you are free to have absolute power over others. And that is the ultimate Luciferic. And of course, that's one that has apparently brought down a number of teachers. The other defect that the Luciferic offers on the way up is to see love as a trap. I mean, that's a very specific one. That as you go up higher and higher, the Luciferic will come to you, either in the form of a person, a teacher, or an entity coming through somebody you're talking to. He will say, don't you see that love is just a trap? And they will sometimes use the Buddha's description of the ultimate reality as void to verify it and back it up. No, it's not love that's a limitation to the realization of the infinite reality. It's the attachment to it. None of these things have any power within themselves. All the things we're scared about and taught about through all spiritual and religious instruction, it isn't the thing themselves, it's our attachment to it. Is money and sex a great limitation to spiritual evolution? Well, Ramakrishna said so, and young men, it's such a problem that he forbid it. You weren't allowed to even touch money. Money and sex were the two traps. Within a certain limited context, that's so. In a broader context, no, it's the attachment to them. A free being can go to the casino, win or lose, and walk away untouched. Untouched, because the reality is not involved in it. No, it's the attachment to love and money. It's the attachment to power. So I saw the Luciferic. What the Luciferic is the temptation to own the power of God, but not the love of God. You see? Because the love of God, that which divinity is both power and love. If you negate the reality of the love, then you have nothing but power over others. And the next question to the Luciferic, they haven't tried it since because I beat his ass for him. The next thing to the Luciferic is that what is your attachment to power, buddy? Now that you have no karmic consequences to pay, now that there's no arbitrary God waiting up there from the Old Testament to beat the chops off you, why don't you just do whatever you're going to do? Forget about conscience. There's no payment can be extracted by anyone. All power is yours. That's what it's said. Jesus got the same deal in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus got the same presentation, didn't he? If you'd kneel down and worship me, all power will be yours. So the answer to that Luciferic demon, because you'll get him, if you're moving towards enlightenment, he's waiting for you. And teachers have failed to prepare their students with what the answer is. To the naive mind, it sounds very convincing. It comes from very high feeling authority. This amazing realization, man, you have no consequences. There's nothing and no one to be answerable to for. You're beyond human karma. All power is yours. All power is yours. And if you stop at that point, you become a prince in the Luciferic realm. And the question to that demon is this: of what good is your power? Of what use? Are you still attached to power? What do you want with power? I remember one time somebody hated me very intensely, which I picked up on the inner, and it was reported via a dream from somebody else that this entity hated me. And this is when I was a celebrity in a different realm, in New York. I had the biggest practice in the world, in the country, and all this. This guy hated me, and I said, "What does he hate me for?" "He envies your power." I said, "Power? What power?" I treat lots and lots of sick people. What is he talking about? A projection from his own unconscious, I guess. Because if you contextualize things in terms of power, then you see that as power. If 1 million people go, does that give you power? It doesn't change who you are one iota. You know, what we were talking about women before. You see, what is the magnificence of the woman is the divinity within her womanhood. It's not her womanhood per se, but the divinity expressing itself in this particular case as femininity, and when we get to Father's Day, expressing itself as masculinity. You see, those are just the world of form. It's only how it looks from a viewpoint of perception, the viewpoint of perception. And as consciousness evolves, it transcends gender. You know, that which you are has no limitations such as gender. Anyway. All right, so you've already got the answer to the ultimate. The one is the challenge to love, to sacrifice love for gain and power over others, and manipulation, sexual satisfaction, or whatever. The other great temptation is the Luciferic. The teaching that love is an attachment and a limitation and a block to enlightenment is a major error. We have permission to ask that, resist. That is a statement of fact, resist. That is a statement of fact. And you see, the authority background of it is the misinterpretation of the Buddhic teaching of the ultimate reality as void. Void is nothingness. What the Buddha meant was no thingness, nothingness, beyond form. What the Buddha said was that the ultimate truth is the unmanifest, beyond form. Resist. Beyond form. That's different. If the void was the absolute reality, there'd be nobody to tell you about it, wouldn't there? First of all, they'd have nothing to say and there'd be no one there to say it. The ego will create a feeling of oblivion, and you go into oblivion, and because oblivion is not the same as the ultimate reality, you can't stay there, and you come out of oblivion and you find yourself 3 years old in a little cart. Shocked to discover that you have a body again. People ask me about the various religions in the world. So far, the Buddhists have maintained the strictest, purest. The Buddhists have maintained the highest teaching. People ask, what's the highest teaching? I think classic Buddhism. The highest teaching is classic Buddhism. Yeah, classic Buddhism is pretty much, it hasn't sold out for political gain, control, political power. See, what happened with Christianity is it got sold out piecemeal, doled out to the various rulers and emperors and various things. So far, Buddhism has avoided that. I don't know where Hinduism is currently. Let's just see where the world is at currently. Well, of course, you have to be quite definite in how you express this. Current Protestantism, as it is practiced in America, Protestantism as a general, is over 485, 490, 495, 500, 505. Let me write this down. Protestantism 505 as of today. Protestantism, consciousness level of it is falling, resist. Rising, resist. It's becoming secularized, progressive. Oh, I see, it's spread by secularization, yeah. All right, so what happens is as a religion gets older is it begins to get secularized by the civilization, in which it finds itself. You know, financial considerations. It takes money to build churches, and you got to build a congregation, and everything costs money. You got to have insurance. You know what I mean? Especially if you're a priest nowadays. Imagine the malpractice insurance. Talk about doctors. Oh, geez. So, of the world's current religion, let's say, well, let's ask where current. We can ask about Hinduism. Hinduism is practiced in its most pristine level in India. Currently, is over 500 resist, 560, 580. 575, 580, 580. Hinduism at its best in current India comes out at 575. Hope somebody's writing this down because afterwards I don't remember any of this. Hinduism. We were going to ask about Islam. Islam, as currently practiced in the Arabic world, calibrates over 200 resist. No. Islam has just been destroyed. Destroyed. Christianity, Catholicism. Okay. Catholicism in the current world, exclusive of priestly events, is over 500, 510. Catholicism at its best, at its pristine best, in current America is over 510 resist. It's over 509 resist. It's about 510, it's over 505, 506. It's loving, but it has lost its pristine. Don't forget, in the beginning, it was 1,000. At the time of Christ, Christianity was 1,000. So it's come down considerably. Islam has come down considerably. Hinduism still maintains it, what do we say, 575. That's very high, 575. And it's close to enlightenment at 600, wow. And Buddhism has declined the least. Let's see what Buddhism is at currently. Let's see, well.
Yeah, but how do you ask that? 'Cause there's
Yeah, I'll have
different
to,
branches.
yes, I'll define it classically. Okay. The vehicle, Hinayana, we have permission to ask about Hinayana. Hinayana calibrates over 800, 850, sorry. Hinayana Buddhism as practiced today calibrates over 850, 860, 870, 870. Okay, we got 870, somebody put that down. Mahayana, which includes Zen, calibrates over 850, 860, 865. Did we get 860 for both of them? Somebody's writing it down. Huh?
870.
Let's do it again. Hinayana and Mahayana are almost identical as far as calibrated level of consciousness, resist. Yeah, they're almost identical. One is the lesser vehicle, one is the greater vehicle. Lotus Land Buddhism is something else. Let's do Lotus Land. Lotus Land is the closest to Christianity. We have permission to do Lotus Land in front of this audience, resist. Lotus Land, we have permission in front of this audience, resist. Is over 550, 580, 590, 600. Lotus Land is right at 600, resist. Yeah, I would suspect so. Lotus Land is right at 600. Lotus Land is the Buddha of salvation, in which the Buddha becomes the Savior. It's the equivalent of Christianity. The radical the spiritual realist, you might say. The spiritual teacher has been kicked around throughout the centuries, realizes that in this world which calibrated less than 190 over the many centuries, that the best you could hope for was to reach unconditional love. Don't forget, in a world that's dominated by hatred, hatred, anger, starvation, war, killing, rape, suicide, 500 is almost astronomical. Almost astronomical. Almost astronomical. So, in a way, Jesus Christ, the Lotus Land Buddhist, the Buddha of salvation, the great Savior is saying, aim for 500 or 540, and from there on, you don't have to worry. Let's see if that's true. You get to 540, you won't have to worry. Resist. You get to unconditional love, you won't have to worry. Speak.
What about the Native American Indian for spiritual practice?
I did the Native American. See, the Native American was a monotheist. It said the history of religion will tell you the first monotheists were in ancient Egypt. The sun god, Akhenon, wasn't it? Aka somebody, was the launching of monotheism for the first time about 500 BC, or 5000 BC, somewhere around there. Somewhere around there. What was her question? What was her question? Oh, Native American, yes. All right, so the great accomplishment there was the pagan tribes, and the reason ancient Egypt rejected that particular ruler is he brought in monotheism, just like in later Roman culture, there were many gods, numerous gods. So we say primitive religion tended to have numerous gods, a pantheon of gods, which still exists to this day. In Hinduism, each one, or you might say, are subdivisions of deity divided into various representations. What was the question?
Native American.
Oh, Native American, yes. All right, so the Native American, you see, was into monotheism. Of course, we don't know how far back their history is, what their teachings were back that far. Ancient Egypt, we still have, actually the writings from those days. But the Native American believed in the Great Spirit, was already a monotheist. Actually, was a monotheist. And I think we calibrated Chief Detroit, who's very famous. Anybody here familiar with his recitations of Chief Detroit are quite profound. All right, Chief Detroit, who is an Iroquois, calibrated over 700 resist. 710, 720, 730. 730, that's higher than Muhammad. Muhammad came in at 731. So that capacity to realize the presence of an infinite oneness, the infinite divinity out of which all of creation manifests. See, the Native American could see the expression of divinity in all things that live. Brother elk, brother rabbit, apologizing to the fact that I've got to knock you out of body. See, the animal doesn't die when you knock it out of body. It's just knocked out of body. Let's see. That's a fact, resist. Yeah. And sometimes the animal hardly even notices it. The animal doesn't really notice it most of the time, resist. Yeah, it doesn't notice it most of the time. It's flying around in a little fly's body, swat. Now it's flying around in its little etheric body. It doesn't even really notice. It comes back in through another egg and it's flying, and it's got amnesia for that. It doesn't even remember that it was and then wasn't. So it doesn't worry about not being because it doesn't remember that it wasn't. So the Native American already knew that the animal doesn't actually die. It sacrifices this physical manifestation, now has to go around the other side and wait to come back again. And so he says, thank you, brother, for giving up your physicality for the maintenance of my physicality. And don't take this personally, but I got to eat you. All right, so the intellect puts that down as, what is it, pantheism? In Catholicism, it's an error to see divinity in all of nature and all that exists, because traditional religion tends to be seeing God as transcendent. You see, probably the reason Buddhism comes up so high is because the Buddha taught that the realization of the absolute truth, by whatever you call it, divinity or the ultimate or reality, he called it the Buddha nature, is merely to realize that which we talked about this morning, that which you really are, that instant right before mind gets in and interrupts your awareness of who you are. So the Buddha said God is immanent, not. So the ultimate divinity is both immanent within as the self with a capital S and transcendent as the supreme. When Krishna writes of the supreme, it's really meant to be not only the supreme transcendent, but the the supreme immanent as the self, as that, the essence of that which you are. So the Native American then was quite evolved. And happily didn't know he was evolved, or he would have made a thing out of it. Chopped it to pieces, you know what I'm saying? Addiction is a whole story in itself. I don't know if we have time to do addiction. We'll do addiction, and then we'll break again. I did probably one of the first lectures on consciousness, and it was on addiction back in the early 80s. Yeah, I did it in California at a conference on consciousness and addiction. My understanding of addiction at that time was that, you see, all this stuff from here down is painful. Painful as compared to it's not being there. Drugs block out your experiencing of all this here. A drug itself only calibrates around 75 or 80. Alcohol calibrates around 75. Drugs calibrate around 75 to 80. See, as chemicals, these chemicals just calibrate around 75 or 80. The awareness of the presence of God within is blocked by the conversation and the energy fields of the ego. It's like the clouds in the sky block off the radiance of the sun. What the drugs do is silence these energy fields, anesthetize them. Therefore, you only feel the radiance of the higher vibrations. Now, all these vibrations are going on at once. Let's say light comes through a spectrum. You see the radiance. If I block all these off, now you experience, this is who I am. Huh? The experience, even if experienced once, is like a near-death experience. The first time you get high, you already got it. First time you feel that lovely, gorgeous, I love everybody, isn't life grand? Whoa, you got it right now. Right at that moment. Anybody who doesn't keep repeating that must be stupid. I say, oh, I'm going to go back to here, go to the office and be PO'd at my boss and worry about my... What's the matter with that idiot? Why didn't he just block it off and stay there? Stay stoned and live there, you know what I'm saying? That's what the voice within says. Why should I live this miserable, horrible life? Have a few beers on the way to work. It's not hurting anybody, it's my money, right? Well, so that euphoria then is not, so the drug, it doesn't have the capacity to create a high. The point is, it is not the drug that creates this feeling of euphoria. The feeling of euphoria is the radiance of the self. Here's this. All right, so if we block off the negative energies, then what's left is the radiance of the self. You feel high, you feel fantastic, you feel great. The only problem is, you didn't really transcend the lower sense of the ego. You only temporarily blocked it off. You found a shortcut. Somehow that creates some kind of a karmic debt. Right? Somehow that creates some kind of a karmic debt. Somehow it's as though the money that you stole, you now owe back later with interest. Anybody who's gone through withdrawal from drugs or alcohol knows what I'm thinking. You pay it, and with interest. All that you stole, you might say, in an artificial manner, now you're not allowed to touch it. If you're going to recover one day at a time, you can't touch any of it. So then what happens is the way back legitimately is discovered. So the 12 steps is nothing but how to come from an artificially induced euphoria back into a lovingness which you have actually become. Not because you have become it, you own it, it's no longer vulnerable, nobody can take it away from you. Because lovingness is a condition, it's a way of being. It's a way of being, and as members of this group know, because there's a great deal of lovingness here. As you walk through Walmarts, your lovingness goes with you, and people intuit it. That's why they smile at you, and they're open and very vulnerable with you. You see, what love is an openness and a vulnerability. The lady, I bumped into her basket, and she was just wide open and totally vulnerable to me. You know, I could have snatched her purse and run. She probably would have said, "Thank you. How can we help you? Would you like another purse?" You know. All right. Trust. Part of love is trust. The more loving we are, the more capable we are of trust. So, all right, that's the way we get out of the negative. So that's the story on addiction, pretty much. You get addicted. What you're addicted to is this state. Once you experience this state, nothing less than that is going to ever do, I'll tell you. Near-death experience, how many people here had near-death experiences? Right. Nothing in this world comes near it. The longing to return to that state of awareness, that condition, that presence, hangs with you. And that's what the addict has to get off of, and that's why recovery is slow, difficult, and statistically these levels are not necessarily progressive. You know, it's not like grade school and then third grade, fourth grade. You can make great leaps. Hitting bottom, you know, the story of addiction is, to me, addiction is the fast way to God. You either die or you get it. Either guy, you did it. So it's like last gaspers, you know. You've been 63 times on this planet and you're getting pretty desperate. The fastest way, it either makes you or breaks you, is addiction. You either die in insanity and agony and horrible death, or you transcend it. So you can go all the way from down here, suicidal right here, and suddenly go into a presence, infinite state, incredible state, like the presence of God. From the depths of hell, one can call forth, if there is a God, I ask him to help me. Then remember nothing, and suddenly stand in the infinite presence. So that's from the lower depths of hell to, what was the level of that day? The level of that day was over 750, 800, 850, 890, 900. It was the ultimate. From the depths of hell to the presence of the infinite. So, can you jump levels? You bet you can. As we said, you can go from grief, stop seeing it as loss, feeling sorry for yourself and juicing it out of self-pity, and seeing it as freedom. Where is freedom up here? 200 and something. Where is freedom? What happened to our freedom? Somebody's stolen our freedom. I want my freedom back, God, please. Where's my freedom? I know what I can grieve. I can grieve I've lost my freedom. Oh, I'm safe with attachment again. Oh. You see, if you get attached to freedom, then it becomes a compulsion. You see them out there on motorcycles all day long, tattoos, hair flying, I'm free. I mean, they're hooked on it, you know what I mean? They're like addicted to it. You take away his Harley and he thinks suicide. We told you last time, nobody ever shoots a Harley Davidson by mistake, you know? Children, family members, ex-wives, mother-in-laws, shot all the time by accident, but never Harley Davidson. So you can get addicted to even freedom, right? It's a compulsion to never get a job, never put a tie on. You're like hooked on it, you know what I'm saying? You got run by it. All right. So we can bypass levels. There's a relic around. Let's ask if we can ask about this relic. I don't know anything about this relic. I only heard that there is a relic around. There is a relic around, resist. This is a genuine relic, resist. We have permission to ask about this relic, resist. This is a genuine, real relic, resist. It has the vibration within it of its original owner, resist. Okay, oh, I get what it is. Okay, it's over 800, 850, 860, 870, 890. Its energy of this, the energy within this relic is over 890, 900, 920. Okay, this there's a relic somewhere. I don't know where it is. Well, I'm going to go visit it. I don't know about you folks. I just want to touch my little toe to that 920 and photograph it maybe. All right, so that's something I've never asked before. The spiritual energy can persist in the physical body even after physical death, resist. It only does so in evolved, enlightened beings, resist. It does so in the average human being, resist. Oh, in the enlightened being, the remains are special. Huh, that's strange, isn't it? I never realized that.
I'm going to stuff you.
There's karmic merit in visiting a relic, resist. The karmic merit arises from the reverence from the presence within, resist. Oh, I see. The karmic merit arises from really the reverence for God as represented by the energy of the relic, resist. Okay. The karmic benefit arises from the energy of the relic itself as a physicality, resist. They both. There's a value to visiting relics, folks. Hate to tell you that. I mean, travel restrictions being what they are today. Going through, you're getting on your bag saying, we got to check you out for relics, boy. He's carrying a relic in his pocket. Bring it, take him aside for his spirit. Oh, golly. All right, short subject, and then we'll resume later. The date of death, we said before, is already set at the time of birth. The date of death is already set. The question was, is that date like written in cement? Resist. Is that date like equivalent of written in cement? Resist. Do we have other options? Resist. No, you don't really. Oh, you think you did. Well, I don't have to feel bad about that one anymore now. I had the opportunity, didn't take it. Years after, I said, God, what an idiot you were, man. There you were in that infinite presence, one with the infinite lovingness of the universe. And you said, I'm going back in the body. What a stupid idiot.